She was a college student with her whole future mapped out.
She's taking honors classes. She was a smart girl.
Era su meta esa de ser abogada.
She wanted to go far in her career and far in her life.
Only she would never get the chance.
They found her body in an open grave.
She had been strangled to death.
There was a knock at the door, and it was a homicide detective.
Was it the bitter ex-boyfriend?
He was just so envious of the life that she had.
Or had a would-be lover taken revenge?
He'd asked her out, and she turned him down.
Only one thing is certain. Finding the killer won't guarantee justice.
The defense filed a motion to plead not guilty by reason of insanity.
I was just dumbfounded.
He killed somebody.
He admitted to strangling her over and over again.
August 15th, 2013. It's Thursday morning in Omaha, Nebraska, a sprawling city of almost 1 million.
It is a large place, but it still feels really, really small.
Very family-friendly, very welcoming. Overall, it's just a great place.
You got a great downtown as well as the zoo. Our zoo is known around the world.
Unfortunately, a world-class zoo and a skyscraper-studded downtown aren't the only surprising things about Omaha.
There is a lot of violence here, a lot of shootings.
The majority of the crimes have been associated with gang violence.
It's a little after 9 that morning when a groundskeeper at Omaha's Graceland Park Cemetery is dealing with the aftermath of that violence.
He is preparing a grave for a recent murder victim.
The grave had been dug the day before, but now it was time to set up for the funeral.
But as he approaches the grave, the worker makes a startling discovery. It's already occupied.
Ma'am, are you okay?
He realized that she was dead, and at that point, he called the police.
911?
When the police arrive, they confirm that the young woman is dead.
They're trying to identify the body inside the grave, but there's nothing on her that can identify her.
Despite having no wallet or driver's license, police are able to learn the young woman's identity.
That same morning, a family that lived just a few blocks away from the cemetery had reported their daughter missing.
She had a tattoo on her side that was like a cross with like a woven ribbon around it.
They get a description of the missing person, and then it clicks that the person missing is the same person that they're trying to identify in the graveyard.
"19-year-old Melissa Rodriguez grew up in the midst of a loving Mexican-American family.
Melissa was the middle daughter. From the time she was born, she just had a sparkle in her eyes.
We did everything together. We were inseparable.
Growing up, she was just a very loving sister. She was always there for me if I ever needed her.
Me iba al trabajo, llegaba y ya me estaban esperando en la puerta y papa.
Melissa was a daddy's girl. She loved her dad.
She always liked to spend time with her father. He was born in Mexico, and he would go to Mexico almost every year and do a pilgrimage. And the first time she went, she was like in 8th grade, and she went with her dad, and they did that several times after that.
Melissa also loved school.
Her academics were always #1 to her. She was a hard worker. She always knew what she wanted.
Melissa wanted to become a lawyer so she could help people who couldn't help themselves.
I'd go to school conferences, and that was the first thing that they would say. Her academics are great, but she is such a kind soul. I think she had so much love that she wanted to spread it and give it to someone else.
And few people needed love more than Melissa's high school boyfriend, Michael Lloyd.
Michael had a pretty rough upbringing when he was younger.
He didn't have the stable family and happy childhood that she did.
He experienced a lot of trauma early on. His father was a victim of gang violence and was murdered when he was 1 year old.
After that, he ended up moving towards the East Coast and out of Nebraska.
Michael and his mom settled in North Carolina, but the trauma followed them there.
It just kind of trickled down into his regular everyday life. He was really looking for that love and attention, but Michael and his mom did not have the best relationship. He didn't get along with the men she dated.
There was consistent issues there.
Eventually, his mother had sent Michael back to Nebraska.
Michael returned to Omaha when he was 16 years old to live with his grandmother.
That was when Melissa Rodriguez came into his life.
Michael and Melissa actually had a chance meeting after the basketball game in high school.
She was on the dance team in high school. They would perform at all the basketball games.
After basketball games, our high school had a hangout spot. We would all order tacos and just hang out in the parking lot.
How long you been dancing?
Since I was a little girl.
You must be tired after all that.
I remember Melissa telling me she met a guy who was funny, made her laugh.
Soon, the young couple was inseparable.
I was excited for her. I mean, seeing my older sister happy, that's all I kind of really wanted for her.
Melissa was a very nurturing and caring person and wanted to help him better himself.
She felt like she could try to help him to achieve some of those things that he didn't have.
It was a good relationship. Michael seemed to always be there for Melissa.
But would Melissa always be there for Michael?
She had set goals. She had everything set up for college.
Michael, on the other hand, didn't.
Michael was trying to figure out what to do. Michael didn't have the drive to want greater things for himself.
And by the summer of 2012, their relationship had run its course.
Mike and Melissa's relationship was just a short high school fling because they were on different paths.
She got to go to University of Nebraska-Lincoln, which is one of the top schools in the state.
Michael goes back to North Carolina to rekindle his relationship with his mother.
Settling into her new routine at college, it appeared that Melissa had moved on.
Once they broke up, Melissa started to focus on her dreams and her aspirations.
She was doing good in her classes.
But now, just weeks away from the start of her sophomore year, police have identified Melissa's dead body at the bottom of an open grave.
It just so happened that up the street, other officers had just taken a report from Melissa's family saying that she had gone missing.
One thing that Melissa's family had said is that she had a tattoo that would help identify her, and that's when police knew who they had found.
But how and why had she died? When homicide detectives arrive at the scene, they make a chilling discovery.
Detectives realize that Melissa's underwear is missing.
Was she sexually assaulted?
You might have a sex crime here.
"19-year-old college sophomore Melissa Rodriguez was pursuing her dreams.
Melissa had set herself up to live the life that she always dreamed of. So she was going to become a lawyer.
Si hubiera sido su carrera, hubiera ayudado a tanta gente.
Instead, Detectives are trying to figure out how her dead body ended up at the bottom of an open grave.
All they had at this point was the initial missing persons report filed by the family.
Examining the body, detectives determined that Melissa had died shortly after she disappeared.
Rigor mortis had set in, which showed that Melissa had been dead for at least 12 hours.
Based on the bruising around her neck, it appeared that she had been strangled.
Other clues suggest a possible motive.
Melissa's underwear is missing.
We might have a sex crime here.
Hoping the autopsy will reveal if that's the case, detectives release the body to the medical examiner and turn to the worker who discovered the body.
The groundskeeper didn't really have much to say. When he started work that morning, the body was already there.
Detectives also asked them about video cameras. The groundskeeper confirms they do not have any video cameras on site.
We're gonna check around.
There was no surveillance video or eyewitnesses as to what actually happened and how Melissa ended up in that open grave.
From the cemetery, detectives head next door to Hitchcock Park.
Hitchcock Park is actually connected to Graceland Cemetery, and it's been a popular park for decades.
A line from the cemetery to Melissa's house went straight through the park.
Maybe this was where sexual assault was initiated.
It's a very wooded area that can be very secluded, especially at night when the park is closed.
Although it's generally considered safe,
Hitchcock Park is a very family-friendly place where lots of families come. It's not known for being a place where sexual assaults happen or sexual predators are lurking.
after a quick survey of the park fails to produce any clues, detectives move on to Melissa's parents' house to break the horrible news.
There was a knock at the door, and it was a woman.
Can I help you? We're sorry to have to inform you.
And she introduced herself as the homicide detective. And at that point, I knew Melissa was gone. What's going on? It's gone! It's gone!
Se me cayó el mundo a mí. Se me cerró el mundo en la cabeza.
At that moment, nothing else mattered. We had lost our baby.
Despite their grief, the Rodriguez family is able to tell detectives they can only think of one person capable of killing Melissa.
I told her to stay away from him. I told her. Stay away from who?
They tell police to look into her ex-boyfriend, Michael Lloyd.
According to the family, what began as a high school romance had turned sour as Melissa prepared for college.
It was kind of difficult to figure out where Michael would fit into that future.
The family said there was no doubt that Michael resented it.
She had a graduation party at our house, and Mike just was acting really kind of strange. And, you know, she got checks and then she had cash, and everything was in her bedroom. And then that evening, she went to go look in her bedroom, and all her cash was gone.
And after Melissa committed to the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, her relationship with Michael soon sputtered out.
When Melissa went to the university, I was relieved. I was very happy that he was out of the picture.
But at the end of her first semester away from home, Melissa made the decision to return to Omaha.
She was a little bit homesick. A lot of her, lifelong friends were still here in Omaha.
She did transfer back here to Omaha and went to UNO.
But Melissa may have had an ulterior motive.
Michael also returned to Omaha from visiting his mom in North Carolina.
They started to get back together about a month of him being back in Omaha.
Melissa's mother says her daughter had been willing to overlook what Michael had done in the past.
He had a bad life. He didn't have a family. He didn't have all the things that Melissa had.
It is easy for Melissa to want to help fix Michael, save Michael, to help Michael.
But according to Melissa's family, Michael didn't want help. He wanted control.
He was just so envious of the life that she had, and he knew what he could say to her and what would bring her down. And he knew if he could get her into his control that he could steer her off from the life that she had planned out for her.
Her sisters say it worked too.
She started believing that she was truly this person that he was making her out to be.
She wasn't as bubbly. She was starting to become more quiet, more to herself.
But according to the family, that wasn't the worst of it.
He's starting to get abusive, not only mentally, but physically.
I noticed that Melissa would have little bruises here and there.
Be like, whoa, what happened? And she's like, oh, I ran into the door handle.
The family says everything came to a head in June, 2 months before her death.
What happened then?
She was living with him, and she came to visit.
She said she was just grabbing some clothes. I mean, I wanted to just give her a hug because I hadn't seen her for a while. And when I did that, I just immediately saw she had bruises all over her neck.
Lisa!
Mom, it's nothing.
What do you mean it's nothing?
And I was just like, what is wrong? What happened, you know? And she's like, I don't want to talk about it. I can't talk about it.
Call the police.
The police had come, but no report was filed.
She didn't press charges against him that day, and we couldn't do anything about it.
And there was probably more than just fear behind her decision.
Going off of the statistics and the history of domestic violence and abuse, it makes complete sense why she didn't want to press charges, because she didn't want him to feel like she had gave up on him. She didn't want him to feel like she could not be trusted. For some reason, victims feel like they have to give this ultimate sense of love and loyalty to this person.
When it comes to teenagers, a lot of them don't completely understand what abuse is. They're still in that stage of wanting to please people. They don't really understand that what somebody is doing to them is not right.
Teen dating violence has been on the rise for quite some time. That can include mental and physical abuse. Many times, these issues aren't addressed because teens don't look at it as abuse. They have this idea that this is just how we fight. This is what you do with someone you love. And it becomes a cycle because the abuse gets worse. And then it takes so long to realize, like, oh, this was not what a healthy relationship is supposed to look like. They feel like you're getting hurt, getting hit because you are disloyal, because you aren't doing the things that I need of you.
They don't fully understand that what's happening to them is not good.
There's not a lot of education out there about domestic violence, especially for young kids. I mean, she just got out of high school.
That afternoon, Melissa returned to Michael.
We hadn't had much contact with Melissa for almost a month. Very few phone calls. You just didn't know how she was.
But then, at the end of July, Melissa finally reached out to the family from a local hospital.
There was an altercation between Melissa and Mike.
Her injuries weren't super extensive, so her family was just happy that she was okay and that Michael seemed to be gone.
En esa del regreso del hospital, pensábamos que ya se había terminado todo con él.
She needed to help herself at that point to press the charges, and he wouldn't be able to do anything about it once he was in jail.
The county attorney ultimately did issue a warrant for Michael Lloyd.
But the Rodriguez family's relief would be short-lived.
Melissa hadn't been home maybe a couple of days, and I'd gotten home from school and it was just me and Melissa. She had received a text and I didn't think it was anything.
Hey, I'm gonna step outside real quick, okay?
She told me, "Oh, Nicole, I'm gonna step out." I was like, okay.
But within minutes, Melissa was gone.
That was the last time I saw Melissa. We spent the rest of the evening trying to call her cell phone.
Nunca contestó. Simplemente el mensaje le dije, regresa, mija, aquí a tu casa.
And now that they know Melissa is dead, the family has no doubt who did it.
I was thinking Mike got a hold of her.
Given his history with Melissa, detectives are inclined to agree.
Police are now looking for Michael.
But their search will lead them to a surprising discovery.
Michael was in the mental health facility.
Police actually placed him under protective custody before she was murdered.
Detectives investigating the murder of 19-year-old Melissa Rodriguez have just been given a very strong lead by her family.
The family was sure that Melissa's abusive ex-boyfriend, Michael Lloyd, was to blame for her death.
He has a recent arrest warrant, so he is already wanted for a previous crime against Melissa.
So their first task will be tracking him down.
They had to go find Mike because I believe she's the one who did this.
However, once detectives return to the station to gather background information on Michael, their investigation hits an early snag.
According to Michael's file, he had been placed under an emergency protective custody order, and he was taken to a local mental health facility.
Police placed Michael under an emergency protective order prior to Melissa's murder.
Michael had ended up in the facility almost a week before the murder occurred, and it had nothing to do with Melissa.
On August 8th, Michael actually walks himself into the Omaha Police Department to talk to somebody about his father's murder.
The murder was committed over 18 years ago.
How can I help you?
At which time he was only 1 year old.
The investigation back in 1995 had determined that his father's death was gang-related.
But when Michael sat down with the police, he said that wasn't what really happened.
Michael goes into this long rant about how he thinks his mother is responsible for his father's death.
And why is that?
Because the way she acts, it's like she doesn't even miss him.
After Michael lost his dad, I think it was very difficult for him to accept that his mom was giving attention to other men instead of him.
Okay.
Something needs to be done about this.
He tells them that he has thoughts of harming his mother.
But I can't do this alone.
What do you mean?
He even asked them to help him in killing his mother.
Based off of what he is saying, police immediately notice that he's not stable.
That's when they figure out that he would be a good candidate to have him admitted into an emergency protective custody.
When a person comes in and they are showing that they are immediate threat to self, threat to someone else, they will put an emergency hold so they can get checked for mental and a psychiatric evaluation.
What the detective didn't know when she committed Michael for evaluation is that he already had a long history of mental health issues.
During his teenage years, Michael Lloyd had been diagnosed as a schizophrenic, bipolar, and dealing with ADHD.
He has hallucinations, paranoia. He was also diagnosed with oppositional defiance, and with that comes aggressiveness.
Unable to deal with his outbursts, Michael's mother sent him back to Omaha.
That opens the floodgate up for Michael's relationship with his mother. You left me. You created these issues. You're the reason why I'm like this.
Michael ended up back in Omaha with his grandmother.
She tried to understand him, she tried to support him, and she tried to get him all the help that she could.
Had it been too late? After the incident that landed Melissa in the hospital, Michael was finally facing charges.
He has a warrant out for his arrest.
While at the treatment facility, Michael had seemingly decided to take some responsibility for assaulting Melissa.
On August 12th, 2 days before Melissa's murder, Michael had called the police from the treatment center.
Michael says that he wants to turn himself in on the assault warrant for harming Melissa.
The police headed over to the treatment center to pick him up on that warrant.
But the staff at the treatment center refused to release him.
I'm here to transport Michael Lloyd to jail.
I'm sorry, I can't do that. He's under a mandatory psych hold.
He doesn't have a psychiatric evaluation done.
He hadn't been assessed by a doctor yet.
Their hands are tied. They can't do anything at all. You have to have assessment done before you release anyone from a mental health facility. It's the law.
And when detectives call the treatment facility on August 15th, they discover Michael is still there.
Michael was their prime suspect, but if he was at this treatment facility this whole time, he couldn't be the killer.
If not Michael, then who?
Investigators decide to subpoena Melissa's phone records so they can figure out who she was last in contact with before she was killed.
The text message she received before leaving the house could have been from the killer.
While waiting to hear back from Melissa's cell provider, detectives start talking to her circle of friends.
She had a lot of relationships and close friends with a lot of the kids that she went to school with.
Several of them also suggested that detectives should look at Michael.
However, Michael's name isn't the only one that comes up.
Is there anyone else that you can think of?
Gordon, maybe?
Melissa's friend said that Gordon was someone she met during spring semester who asked her out several times.
And she wasn't interested?
I don't know. I mean, not really, but she did try to let him down easy.
Hey, I was wondering if you wanted to go out.
Gordon, listen, you're a great guy, but I would hate to lose our friendship.
Homicide detectives investigating Melissa Rodriguez's murder have just learned that a fellow student at the University of Nebraska may have been infatuated with her. His name is Gordon Matthews.
According to Melissa's friend, Gordon was also a first-year commuter student.
We saw him in the student union all the time, studying by himself.
The friend said he seemed like a bit of a loner.
Until Melissa decided to do something about it.
Hey,
What's
do you
up?
mind if we sit here?
Oh, no problem.
Melissa was accepting of everybody. You know, whether you're a nerd, you know, gothics, whatever type of group that you're in, Melissa, she was very welcoming.
She always liked to get to know different people from different backgrounds.
Turns out Gordon's family had just relocated to Omaha, so he didn't really know many people.
Melissa's friend says she tried to draw Gordon out of his shell.
But Gordon was just a friend.
That's what Melissa thought.
Until halfway through spring semester, Gordon made his feelings clear.
I was wondering if you wanted to go out.
Gordon, you're so sweet, but...
Melissa didn't come right out and say it, but Gordon had missed his chance.
At that point, she was talking to Mike again.
Can we still be friends?
Sure.
But according to Melissa's friend, things changed after that.
He started avoiding her. You know, we never saw him in the student union.
Do you know if he ever said anything about hurting her?
If he did, she never told me about it.
After talking to Melissa's friend, the detectives decide to take a closer look at Gordon Matthews.
Melissa's rejection could have given him a motive.
Although when detectives bring Gordon in for questioning, he appears very distraught about her death.
He vehemently denied having anything to do with the murder.
I would never hurt Melissa. Maybe it was that guy she used to go out with.
She told you about him?
Not much. But he sounds scary, though.
To detectives, Gordon seems awfully quick to point the finger at someone else.
Thing is, Gordon, Michael couldn't have done this.
What do you mean?
The detectives didn't give Gordon any details, but they told him that Michael had an alibi.
The question now is, does Gordon have one?
Where were you Wednesday evening?
Working. I took the dinner shift that night.
Gordon said he had a summer job at a restaurant washing dishes downtown.
When the detectives follow up with the restaurant management, they confirm that Gordon was at work the night Melissa died. But it's not an airtight alibi.
Yes. Do you know what time he clocked in?
According to his time card, Gordon clocked in 15 minutes late and almost 45 minutes after Melissa left her house prior to the murder.
You think that gives him enough time for opportunity?
I don't know. He's still got to stash her in the grave and get downtown.
It's tight, but it can be done.
The detectives were hoping that Melissa's phone records would reveal whether or not Gordon was their killer.
Or could it be someone else? Not long after confirming Gordon's alibi, another detective with the Omaha PD walks into the squad room.
Clear the Rodriguez case yet?
No.
This detective wasn't actually assigned to the case, but she was one of the investigators who'd spoken to Michael 6 days prior to Melissa's murder.
Something needs to be done about this.
He had been placed under an emergency protective custody order.
I thought the boyfriend had an assault warrant.
It wasn't him.
They explained that Michael was still at the mental health treatment facility when the murder occurred.
That's not what he told me.
When?
Wednesday. He called and he said he was out.
On Wednesday?
Wednesday the 14th was the day Melissa was murdered.
Detectives investigating Melissa Rodriguez's murder have new information that may blow the lid off her boyfriend, Michael Lloyd's alibi.
The police had been under the impression that Michael had been at the mental health treatment facility when the murder occurred.
Michael had been held in emergency protective custody.
But now, a fellow detective says that Michael called her from outside the medical facility, only a few hours before Melissa went missing.
On Wednesday, he called you
On my cell.
and said he was out.
That's what he said.
They don't know how or why, but Michael must have been released from the center.
Everyone was confused at this point because the detectives had called the facility on the 15th to confirm Michael was there after Melissa's body had been discovered.
It seemed like there was some kind of miscommunication somewhere along the line.
Hoping to get to the bottom of it, detectives head straight to the treatment center.
We need to know what day a particular patient was released from this facility.
Or maybe to see if he's still here?
Who?
Michael Lloyd?
Looks like he was released on the 14th.
Despite his active warrant, the center didn't inform police that Michael had left. And they didn't warn Melissa.
There wasn't a requirement for the mental health facility to contact the police nor contact Melissa's family because the purpose of why Michael was in there had nothing to do with Melissa. It was based upon the threats that he had made on his mother's life.
However, based on the facility records, Michael had only left the center for a few hours.
He checks himself back into the facility.
That's why when detectives called looking for him on the 15th, the staff stated that he was there.
In fact, he's still there now.
Police placed him under arrest for that June incident involving the domestic violence case against Melissa.
For the moment, they didn't have enough to charge him with Melissa's murder.
But for how long?
Now that Michael is in custody, detectives are able to question him about Melissa's murder.
And Michael is totally willing to talk.
Michael is calm. He is answering questions, he's waived his Miranda rights, and then he goes into detail about August 14th.
So why'd you leave the treatment center?
wanted to see Melissa.
Michael tells police that when he left, he took a bus to Melissa's neighborhood.
On the way, he texted Melissa and asked her to meet him at the park next to the cemetery.
Michael says he just wanted to talk to Melissa, but he didn't like what she had to say.
What do you want, Michael? I told you I don't want to see you anymore.
You don't mean that.
Yes, I do.
The situation was bad. The relationship was unsafe and not healthy.
I need to focus on myself, focus on school.
But you said you loved me.
Michael believed Melissa turned on him because Melissa was trying to get away and better her life.
And when he realized that he no longer had the control over Melissa that he wanted, he became enraged.
You need to get help, Michael.
You don't tell me what to do!
He just snapped. He lost it.
She killed my dad. I told you guys that.
That wasn't Melissa.
She was just like her. She was being just like her!
The way Melissa was disrespecting him, he felt like she reminded him of his mother.
And he says that because of that, his anger took over.
He starts attacking her.
He said he strangled her.
But I thought you loved her.
I do love her. But I just couldn't stop.
Strangling someone is a crime of passion. I am applying so much pressure because I want you to know and understand that you are making me have this rage.
Michael strangles Melissa till she loses consciousness.
But that wasn't the end of it.
Mike strangled her multiple times. She would pass out, and once she came back, he would be right there just strangling her again.
Until she finally didn't wake up.
Confronted by detectives, Michael Lloyd has confessed to murdering his girlfriend, Melissa Rodriguez.
Melissa and him meet at the park. They start having arguments, and according to him, Melissa started to disrespect him.
You don't tell me what to do!
Michael said that led him to become enraged and that he started strangling her until she lost consciousness.
She regains it. Michael strangles her again.
Until she finally didn't wake up.
Michael says that once he was sure Melissa was dead, he dragged her body out of the park.
Michael moves Melissa's body to Graceland Park Cemetery undetected.
Then he dumped her body into a freshly dug grave.
He said he spotted it earlier when he walked through the cemetery on his way to meet Melissa.
And then he takes her belongings, including her cell phone and her underwear.
I believe that Michael stripped Melissa of her underwear as kind of a distraction. He wanted to make it look like someone beat and raped her.
From there, he'd taken another bus back to the treatment facility.
Before he goes inside, he disposes of her cell phone and her underwear.
Then he checked himself back into the facility, which is where he was when police first went looking for him.
It was actually a brilliant move.
Checking back into the center appeared to give him an alibi.
But only for a while.
Michael Lloyd, stand up.
And now that Michael has confessed, detectives formally charge him with murder. Detectives have to confirm that he's telling the truth.
They want to make sure, because of his mental state, that he is not confessing to a crime he didn't commit.
They have to go out and find the evidence to prove him guilty.
What detectives find appears to fit with the details of Michael's story.
The autopsy showed Melissa died from strangulation, but there were no findings that Melissa experienced sexual assault before she was killed.
Police were able to locate pieces of her phone from the dumpster where Michael had thrown it out.
They also found security video from the treatment center, which showed him putting the phone in the dumpster before he checked himself back in after the murder.
Finally, Melissa's cell phone records confirm that he had arranged to meet Melissa prior to the murder.
A subpoena of phone records revealed that Michael made the call to Melissa the afternoon of August 14th.
This was moments before she walked out of the house, and the family never saw her alive again.
It's the last piece of the puzzle to confirm Michael's confession.
Prosecutors filed charges against Michael Lloyd for first-degree murder.
We were happy that they were arresting him.
Tenía sentido porque no era nadie más que él, porque ya había dicho que si no era ella para él, no iba a ser de nadie.
I kind of felt some relief, but not much because I knew my sister was gone. Her life could have been saved if Mike would have been in jail as he should have been with a warrant.
As the murder case moves towards trial, the family worries that the system may fail them again.
Mike's mental health came into the picture.
His level of hallucinations, his paranoia, his schizophrenia, all of those things can affect how he presents himself in court.
So the defense requests a psychiatric evaluation to determine if Michael's competent to stand trial.
The thing about competency is that it's not trying to figure out if you're sane or insane at the time of the crime. It's trying to figure out whether you understand the court proceedings and the charges that are levied against you.
The general purpose of a psychiatric evaluation is to assess a client's mental ability.
2 doctors concluded that he was not competent.
They determined that if Michael has proper treatment, he's in consistent care, then he will have the mental capacity to be able to stand trial.
He then went to the Lincoln Regional Center where he received treatment and was able to come back to stand for his charges.
But the fight over Michael's mental state is far from over.
The defense filed a motion to plead not guilty by reason of insanity.
Melissa's family doesn't believe it for a minute.
I'm not a psychiatrist, but I don't think he was really mentally incapable of understanding what he did to Melissa.
He admitted to strangling her over and over again. If he knew what he was doing those 4 or 5 times that he let her come back.
Enfermo, mentálico o no, cuando una persona hace eso, tiene que pagar las consecuencias.
It takes nearly 2 years, but in the end, Michael will pay.
Instead of going forward to trial and trying to prove that he's not guilty by reason of insanity, Michael Lloyd ends up pleading guilty to second-degree murder.
If there would not have been documentation of his mental illness, I'm sure there would not have been any type of plea deal.
Prosecutors felt it was best to have him plead guilty to a lesser crime of second-degree murder than possibly take it in front of a jury and have them find him not guilty by insanity.
The family sees things differently, though.
When he was sentenced, I think I was first introduced to what injustice was.
A Douglas County judge sentenced Michael Lloyd to 30 to 35 years in prison.
He'll be eligible for parole in as little as 15 years.
Que va, si es que sale, va a salir en una edad que todavía joven. ¿Para qué? Para que vaya a hacer otra de sus cosas a otra familia. Nos dieron otro jodazo a nosotros en esa sentencia.
He killed somebody. He should get life.
The family's deeply disappointed with Michael's sentence, but they aren't about to give up.
My mom and, us as a family decided to try to get more justice for her.
Melissa's family was so upset about what happened that they sued the Omaha Police Department, saying that they were culpable in Melissa's death.
There should have never been emergency protection put in place. He should have been in jail.
They also sued the mental health facility for failure to notify Melissa upon Michael's release.
But once again, the family feels the system fails them.
The Nebraska Supreme Court denied the lawsuit in the end.
Both the police and the treatment facility did everything that was legally required.
Still, the family does find some solace in the outcome.
In the end, we may have not gotten the justice that we wanted for Melissa, but laws were able to be changed.
In 2013, police and mental health facilities weren't working in conjunction.
After Melissa's death, the Omaha Police Department required mental health facilities to call 911 if somebody is being released with a police hold.
That provides another layer of protection to make sure that these people aren't immediately released back to society.
Which means that some good has come from Melissa's tragic death.
All Melissa wanted to do was be a good person and to help people. And if this is the way that she's meant to help people, I think she would accept that.
Acceptance has been more of a struggle for the family.
To know that this beautiful young girl who had her whole life ahead of her just got cut short in such a horrific way, it just turned our world upside down. She was my best friend, and life is still hard to this day without her. I have had 3 more kids, and they all know who she is. Exactly a year after my sister passed away, I had a baby girl. Her name is Melissa. Her legacy lives on with her. I remind my oldest how much Melissa loved them and, talk about her, keep her memory alive.
Melissa will never be forgotten.